the food's disappearing. The food that would be available to you if you got out of the system and you didn't buy from the grocery store, it's now all tainted. And they keep up the propaganda about it all being tainted to the point where people are going to be scared to eat anything that doesn't come from them. But they have the answer to this, of course. They're going to grow the meat.
I'm
Then you don't
calling
have to worry
BS,
about
man. There's a huge
screwworms.
amount of non-toxic forageables everywhere as soon as you get off roads and sort of into the forest. Absolutely, fields and forests. There's so much food out there, it'll boggle your mind. Don't believe the propaganda. They're trying to convince you not to eat anything natural that comes from nature. And a guy who was trying to teach me how to wild forage told me, man, the micronutrients and these sort of things, photoactive compounds and things in these are way better than anything you get even from your own garden, because they grew, like we're way out in the country. It's like the stuff you grow in the garden's good. It's like way better than organic stuff and anything you get in the store, right? But what grows in the forest and naturally around there blows anything in your garden away, even though you're just using compost and you're way out here in the countryside. So put that into perspective. Like you got agriculture stuff coming from California, totally covered in pesticides. Then you got to level up and pay a bunch more for organics. And our gardens out here are above that. But he's like, dude, that's nothing compared to what the real earth can give you. Like you're way leveling up when you're out wild foraging, way leveling up.
And I think that's absolutely the answer. Unfortunately, I think there's a concerted effort to reduce your avenues to get food. And I've been seeing this. They've been hammering us with this in the Southwest. This is why your meat's going to cost
down there,
so
aren't
much.
you, in the Screwworm Central?
Yeah. But really, it's just about the new trade organization and the way that it's coming out. It has nothing to do with this worm. However, this wild pigs found with blue meat in California spark alarm. And this seems like a
Wait,
concerted...
those are wild hogs right there. What are you showing?
Right.
That's a wild hog.
But they're blue. The meat's blue. Why? Because they're eating things that are designed to kill other stuff like rodents and other stuff. But it's all out in the wild. So you know that these things are not eating that at people's farms or stuff like that. Someone is spreading it out there.
Rodenticides.
Yeah. But that's okay, because we had this what is it?
No, wait, that's a really interesting article there. So something's surviving the poisons now that can exist, and it takes it into its system, but it's not powerful enough to kill the animal, and it can deal with that toxin. And then you go out and hunt that as a wild.
You will get sick.
But it said a blue tinged mussel. Like, I want to see a picture of the blue tinged mussel myself.
Right.
Like, just the word of a blue tinged mussel. Is this like a fake story?
It could be. That's kind of my point. They're making this idea that you have no other option to go one route. And I think it's not enough now to just, grow your own food and do this. There has to be a real network of backup food, because it's all tainted now through the grocery store. They're replacing food with fake food. And it seems like they're not giving up on it, even though everybody so far is kind of in mass rejected the idea. They're going forward with all of it because they know that you'll be okay, because they gave you GMO. People didn't like it, but they got used to it. Now everything's GMO. And we've been bringing this idea of them growing their own pharmaceuticals in the products from your health products. It's got it in there. They got it in the food. So now we're being cornered into this area where it's really hard especially for the common man that doesn't even, think about these ideas. Just one day, there's no food. They can't get it. They're scared of getting it because of diseases or poisoning. And if we're toxified with plastic, so are the animals. So it seems like they're creating this situation for mass famine on purpose, not on an accident. And it would all come to a head with either war or some kind of event where they start reducing the food. But they're preemptively getting rid of your other avenues of food. And where was this?
But I was going to go hunting, so I'll tell you a thing here. Like, rabbits, you're not. So the old folk here, and then there's a lot of people that say the same thing. Don't hunt any rabbits with a month that does not have an R in it, because there's some sort of bacteria that lives in the gut of the rabbit in the summer months here.
Yeah.
So when you come into like September, that's the first month you can start to take rabbit. But it's better if you get in October, November, December. And we're not talking about April. We're talking about those colder months. So we've protected our gardens. Our neighbors protect their gardens. We left a ton of rabbit around here. So our whole plan is to go harvest a huge amount of rabbit. There must be 50, 60 rabbits around here. They're all cottontails. But when it comes up to that time, 22 with a nice scope on it, just go out and we're going to harvest rabbit all the time. It's just going to be like a rabbit fest here. And, they're a little lean, so you can put some other types of fats in there. A lot of times people use lard or some sort of rendered down fats that you get. But the whole point of that is leaving the game animals here because they haven't been as voracious. There's been so much rainfall that there's so much vegetation. It's almost impossible to keep everything down in the fields right now or even anywhere. Yeah, here it is. Rabbits can carry and be affected by various bacteria, some of which can cause illness, and rabbits themselves potentially be transmitted to humans. True. Pasteurellobus, pasteurellosis caused by Pasteurella multocinda is a common bacterial infection in rabbits, often except in the winter months when it's not prevalent. It's only prevalent in the summer months. So please understand that. See if I was to read that in a news headline, if I didn't know about rabbits, I'd be like, damn, I'm not eating ever as long as I live. But that is only predominant in the summer and the heat months. When you get into the cooler months, then that no longer applies. That's why the old wives' tale or the old hunter's tale, whatever you like to call it, never take a rabbit out of an R season, out of an R month, ever. So the whole thing is we protect the gardens. There's so much wild vegetation right now. The rainfall is crazy. So we left the wild animals just like breed out and like get up to voracious. If there was no other vegetation around, those rabbits would have eaten us out of house and home by now. But there's so much wild vegetation around because there was so much rainfall this year that they're multiplying. There's plenty of food for them. They're not even coming up to the house really anymore. And they're going by 10s, 20s, 50s, 100s. So when it comes into like October, November, there's going to be a huge amount of meat available. And, you can get a whole thing of 122 shells for a few bucks, So for me, that's a great balance because I like to hone my skills anyway. I like to shoot, like to get it. And I can combine those things and then get meat at the same time. But it's clean meat because they're out here. They're not eating out on pesticide, laden fields. They're out here around my 25 acres. My neighbors over there, they got 5 acres. And the other guy over here got 12 acres. And another person over there got 6 acres. And next guy across got 58 acres over on the other side. So between here, there's like 100 acres. They all just stay around here. Nobody sprays. Nobody does anything, right? So it's like really clean meat. And that's another important thing. You need to know where your meat comes from. Where's your source of meat? Like, I don't know when I go into a grocery store, where'd that thing come from? The obvious question, are you on shrooms? Illuminated shrooms, combining 6 powerful mycelium in a fulvic mineral delivery system, selected for their synergistic, restorative, and protective actions. Potent. And please remember, ladies and gentlemen, every purchase you make helps keep this podcast on air. So please remember that link's in the description box below. And are you shrooming? But anyway, don't let those headlines or those types of things scare you away. Understand like the seasonality of different, like you talk bacterias. It's a seasonal thing. And you can still, once you get into the correct season, harvest those animals. And they should be harvested because next year, if we don't have enough rain, there are going to be way too many and they will eat us out of house and home. So again, it's that carrying capacity and balance. Like those animals, if you believe in the Bible, those are for our nutrition and for our sustenance. So if you feel like, oh, I don't want to kill a rabbit, that, I harvest my own geese, I take a machete and I'll take the head off in a single slice and they never feel a thing. Those animals are for us, for our protein, for our benefit. And you have to look at that and you have to get over that. If you can't take an animal for your own sustenance, it took me a while to do that. I'm not going to be like, oh, anybody can do it. It took me a while to get to that point, to take it and then talking to people and then take another one and being, this is the way nature is. This is the way the balance is. This is the way we've always done it. But in those first couple times that you do that, It's going to be a little difficult because a lot of times you're bonded with the animals. You're like, oh, it's my first turkey. Oh, it's my first duck. Oh, it's my first thing. It's kind of like a pet, you know. It's like those, like move them off to the side. You can't harvest those. But as you go along in your journey of raising birds or animals or meat or whatever it is, you start to realize, don't name it. Don't be like super friendly to create a pet out of it because it will be harvested in the future. You need to break that bond. And once you get to that point of raising your animals from egg or from infant all the way up into the meat source, if you can complete that loop, you are at the apex of being prepared, because most people can't do it. Really can't. So have I lost part of my soul and my feeling because I've taken animals before that I've known or I've been around and then, you know, raised them up and taken? And have I, as a shard of my soul died because I've taken life? I don't know. It's a philosophical debate. It's a spiritual debate at that point. You know, a Buddhist would say, I could never do that. But a lot of Buddhists are vegetarian. If you want to live in the real world with fats in your brain so you can survive through these things, you're going to have to start to think in a different way.
Right. Well, that's kind of my point, is there is some real issues going on out there tainting our food. But at the same time, there's a massive amount of propaganda to convince human beings that they can't live off the land, that there's too many problems, that they'll get sick, or, you know, they might need an injection to prevent something, or
pine needle
which
tea,
is
my
funny
friends,
too.
pine needle tea.
So like if you live in New Mexico, Colorado, or Nevada, Utah, California, Oregon, Washington, Montana, the Dakotas, then the meat out there has had its shots. I'll just put it that way, because they're going out there by helicopter, kettling them and making sure that nature is protected by pharma as well. But this is just sick. You could just, if you want to believe the government here, they're just doing it to save, you know, wild populations from these wild pigs. So they go out there and they feed them these tainted foods. But according to them, don't worry about it. It won't enter the food chain. But it seems to be more about scaring people on being able to eat backup resources of stuff. So there's two worlds emerging right now, right? It's, you know, Trump and all them are talking about this golden age, but there kind of is a golden age of technology right now. So in the past 3 months, I've seen at least 20 different articles about different things, but really they're the same topic. And the topic is the ability of pharma to extend our life indefinitely. And they found various different ways to do this now. I've been, you know, really paying attention to this. So here's supposedly a discovery right here where scientists discover molecular switch to turn cancer cells into normal cells, right? So that's great. Aging
What about the
spreads through the
telomeres,
body.
though? What about the telomeres?
Aha, I was going to get to that. I was going to get to that.
I saw your computer earlier. I was seeing what you were looking at.
Right. So they have figured out that aging spreads throughout your body kind of like a condition. So basically, if you have a group of cells that decide they're old, they transmit some kind of protein that tells the rest of the body that it's growing old and it's done with its turn. But they found that these proteins that enter the cell can be blocked. In other words, if you give the protein to people, they'll age faster. Same way that the mice in the labs did. They age faster, but if they block that protein, they get healthier, they start healing up. So there's many different ways. And then, you know, I brought up the mushroom one a week or two ago. They've discovered molecules in that prevent the telomeres from shortening. And now they have drugs out that also do this. They have been tinkering so much with nature that, you know, they even have the immortal jellyfish, about 5-6 different kinds of those. And they're taking the genetics from that, creating things. So we're about to get to a point where they're going to tell you that they have all these technologies, but you have to enter their system to be able to take advantage of these things. You'll have to be totally opted in, because to be able to get these. And other people that say, I don't know, go hunt wild boar to eat because they that's the food source that they have, and it's abundant and it's on the earth, and you can argue it's a nuisance, but it's there and it feeds you. Not to mention growing your own beef and things like that they're trying to end, basically private ownership of beef. I've seen several things like that.
It's a shame though, because
Yeah.
farming has been with us. Well, what do you think helped America as a country itself go from, well, the sad part is I'd read accounts of where a squirrel could never touch the ground running from New York to Louisiana and never touch the ground. But when we get out west, when it got outside of that zone across the Mississippi, going out towards where you live out there, it was more grasslands and, the buffalo and the cattle production and the meat production and that sort of thing. And I know we decimated the buffalo and took them under, a couple 100,000 off their millions of the herd to try to starve the first peoples out. But after that period was finished, the thing that started to bring up a lot of the economy was cattle ranching. So, in symbiosis with the cattle and with the bison at the same time. Not a lot of people talk about this. In the mid to say late 1800s, they were commingling those two species. And because the buffalo provided an enormous amount of, resource for first peoples, that they just tried to remove that because they didn't and hadn't had the same, I guess, usage of what we consider cattle and the parts of the cattle compared to the bison that they'd use for thousands of years. So the hide's a little thinner on a regular, what we consider cattle, or the horns are different, the hooves are different, the meat's different. Everything's very different from a bison, which, you've probably seen those things like 7 feet tall. I'll stand to this thing and look up at bison. A cow, I'm just kind of looking at it like, hey, what are you doing? They're very different animals, processing different. The byproducts are different. Everything that was different, including the tents and everything that could be made in terms of like clothing and everything that could be used from that animal. Because got to realize first people's never wasted anything ever. All the way down to the littlest bone shard could be used for something. And then they came along and killed 1 million bison just for the tongues. But they were taking away the food source. So like, I'm trying to draw this parallel here. If we're coming out where there's a dual species, and the one species that fed, housed, clothed, provided, and let an enormous amount, millions of people survive by using this one animal. If you remove that out, then we saw what the end result was after first peoples were taken down into the reservation and it almost decimated to zero, which is such a sad thing. It was a genocide in itself. But come up to today, the exact same thing is happening. Our food sources being completely wiped away, things that allow us to survive. It is like 2.0, but it's us now. It is our species, our time. This is the exact same thing that whatever it is upon, above, on high, is wiping out our food source, on the protein source, on the things that allow us to survive. And you look back in these chapters of history and I look at it and go, I just had this revelation of, they took out the bison and they removed the protein source and the actual hide source out. So there was no longer shelter for a lot of transient and nomadic peoples. And for us, it's the same thing. They're removing our protein. For us, that's the like weightlifting, muscle source for us. They're removing to make weak our human race. We are being starved out. No different than first peoples were. And I don't care what continent you're going to, whether it's Australia, or whether it's South America, or whether it's here. But we are now on a global starve out. The parallels are so scary right now of what had happened prior. And if you go down to the Aboriginal peoples over in Australia and you see that, it is happening to us right now. So learn from the past. All I say is your past is the history book to the future. Please remember civilizationcycle.com and also buy me a coffee /Civilization Cycle.